I'm Doug.
And I'm Cathy.
Join us as we follow the moon. We're bringing you something a little bit different today because we recently stayed a few weeks ago in Red Bay, Alabama, and it was right at the time that the tornado was marching across Mississippi, and it devastated for tens and maybe even over 100 miles across the state. And it came within probably 20 miles of where we were staying. That was on a Friday evening, and on Sunday, we traveled down through the state of Mississippi to our next spot. And in doing that, we went on the interstate right past Winona, Mississippi, which was a very hard-hit area.
It was.
And we've got video here showing you what we saw as we drove down along the interstate. We did change our route a little bit so that we weren't on secondary routes going through some of these small towns, because the last thing they need 2 days after a tornado goes through is a 40-foot motorhome towing a car trying to get through their streets.
That's right.
So we made it a few extra miles to stay out of their way, and we wanted to talk to you about being prepared for storms, whether they're tornadoes, whether they're hurricanes, anything like that if you're traveling in an RV. Now, keep in mind our perspective, we're traveling in a motorhome. If you're traveling in a travel trailer or a fifth wheel, there may be some other things that you'll want to do. If you want to be prepared in case you need to pull out, you may want to have it already hitched up to your truck. Things like that we don't deal with. But we want to tell you from our perspective a few things that we have found to be very helpful.
Absolutely. Now, the first thing that I would consider or think about is, should I stay or should I leave? With a hurricane coming, you might have time in advance to be watching, because we watch for days on those hurricanes, and we can look at it and go, okay, this is kind of silly to sit here and wait for it. It may or may not go by us. A few years back, we did move out of the way of a hurricane and stayed until it was all done and over with. Mm-hmm. Where we stayed ended up that it wasn't the problem that we thought it might be, but might is a big question mark. As far as a tornado goes, you cannot outrun a tornado.
No.
And no matter which way you go, you can't predict where the tornado's actually going to hit. So you have to be paying attention.
You're exactly right, though. It depends on the type of storm as to what you should do. And as much as this is our home, basically everything we have in this world is inside this box on wheels. We'll leave it in a heartbeat if we have to, because it could be replaced. We can't.
Right. Now, what would be the first thing that we should do to prepare the RV if we know we're just going to stay put?
If you have the option, point the nose or the tail of your rig towards the direction the wind is coming. Now, with a hurricane, those winds change directions as the hurricane passes. We understand that. Same with a tornado, it's a spinning wind. But if you can at least point the nose towards the wind, the coach can take a lot more wind blowing on the narrow part of the front or the back than it can if it's hammering on the sides. So make sure you're positioned, if at all possible, to where you're pointed directly towards the wind. The next thing are your slides. This is one I've heard a lot of differing opinions on. I will tell you what we feel is the right thing to do, and that is to bring the slides in. I've heard people say leave them out because it makes a wider footprint, but if you bring them in, all the weight is over the frame, and you don't also run the risk of your slide toppers being torn off the coach. So I would suggest bring your slides in. Jacks up or down. That's another big controversy, and I've heard quite a few people say pull the jacks up. I've heard other people say bring them down. The jacks are there to stabilize the coach. We were recently in a heavy wind in a Cracker Barrel parking lot.
Yes.
And the coach was starting to move. And this rig is heavy enough. It takes a lot of wind before you start to feel any motion in it. It takes a lot more wind than it did in our gas coach, which was 10,000 pounds lighter.
Yep.
That makes a difference. But when you start to feel that motion, the first thing I did was run the jacks down, which is something I don't normally do when I'm in a parking lot, but I wanted to be stable. And by running those jacks down, immediately the motion stopped. So yes, I wholeheartedly agree with team jacks down in a storm. Park near a structure. This is another one that can go either way. If you've got a good solid structure, especially like with a hurricane, that you can park up next to keep that wind force off of your coach, that's a good thing. If it's not a good solid structure, I would stay far away from it because you don't want its roof coming off on you or debris from it coming in through the walls of your RV. So that's one of those things I think you have to use your own discretion on.
That's right. Now, one of the first things, you're going to hear about storms usually 12 hours ahead, maybe, if you're lucky. And today it seems like we're just hearing of them left and right. But the park that we stayed in Red Bay, they had a little blue packet. And that's a good thing to look through that stuff, because there was a list of storm shelters. And that's
I think
something,
there was like 8 different locations just in that little town.
and you can check and see which one is the closest, which one allows your pets, because you don't want to show up at a storm shelter and not have your pets allowed. And honestly, I wouldn't want to go without my pet.
I wouldn't leave my pet in an RV by itself during a storm.
And we hear people all the time, oh, but that's just an animal. But,
so find out where you're going as far as the shelter and make sure that it is a pet-friendly shelter. And then pack a bag or pack a backpack, something that's easy to grab, set it by the door so you can just grab it on your way out the door. And make sure, you never know when these things are going to hit. If it's going to happen at night, I'll go to sleep dressed.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
So that I can run if I have to.
That's right.
Make sure you've got shoes by the bed or by the door that you can get into, because you hear about people running out the door barefoot and there's broken glass and there's shards of metal. So be prepared with that. Make sure that you've got supplies for your pets. Have an extra can or an extra Ziploc baggie of food in that bag form. Have a little bottle of water for them. Be prepared with your pets that way. Any medication for your pet
or for yourself. That's right.
Have that in that ready bag, ready to go. Any important paperwork, if you've got titles, if you've got a will, if you've got anything like that that is crucial that you don't lose, put it in that ready bag.
And it's a good idea to put them in a big Ziploc, because if your bag isn't waterproof, then those things can get wet.
That's exactly right. Have a jacket. It can be 85 degrees out, and the way it rains and blows sideways, have a water protective jacket there. You're not doing all this for comfort. You're doing this for your protection and your safety.
That's right.
Cell phone. Make sure your cell phones are at hand. Make sure they're charged. And I also have one of those little rechargeable battery packs that I keep with our camera equipment. That will recharge a cell phone 2 or 3 times in case you're in a situation where power is lost. You've got yourself covered that way.
Now, speaking of the storm shelter, one other thing that I'd like to add about for your pet is a lot of times they want your pet in a carrier. And we don't have a carrier. What we do have is a backpack, however, that can zip completely shut. And if you at least have something like that, just because we don't want pets just getting hurt in the shelter, and they don't want the confusion and chaos either.
And another item that we had never heard about until we were on the road last year, and I don't even remember now if it was Iowa It was in one of the tornado belt states, and that was a helmet.
Yes, yes.
Football helmet or bicycle helmet, something to protect your head.
That was the first time we heard about it. We never heard about it before. And yet now when we're watching every storm, you hear them saying, get out your helmet, a bicycle helmet, a football, anything that will protect your head. A work helmet.
That's right.
You know?
And pillows. If you can't get out, grab your big comforter off of your bed, grab pillows to put around your head or protect yourself, anything like that.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that's, I think, just as important about preparing the RV and preparing in case you do have to evacuate is tracking it, so you'll know when's the time that you need to go. And there's a lot of ways to track the storm. We do not have satellite service for our television. And the first thing I do every time we get into a park is I program the television for the local stations. We're not real big on local TV or on television in general, but I always make sure that I've got local stations on there so that if I need to get the weather, I can. And just as important, and one thing that I never thought about coming from a sticks and bricks to an RV, is know what county you're in.
Yes.
Google it. Google what county is such and such city in. It will tell you that easy. And that way, as you're listening to these warnings, they're always laid out by county. You'll know what applies to you and what doesn't.
Another thing about is if you're on right close to the edge of a state line, that you want to make sure you've got on that television, you've got the ability to get from one state their programming, when it crosses over into the next state, to have theirs, because you're going to probably have to switch channels. They literally went off the air once they crossed state line, and so we had to quickly change our channel to one that had the right, the state that we were in.
Yeah, when we were in Red Bay, the station we were watching was in Mississippi, not in Alabama, and as soon as the storm got to the state line, they went back to regular programming.
Yeah.
We had to change channels and get one.
Because it was still in the middle of
get one that was in Alabama so we could continue watching.
Well, what's something else that we use?
We use internet. One in particular we have really liked, and that is a web or a YouTube channel called ryanhallyall. And Ryan will, if he sees that there's bad weather coming, he'll put up a short video about it and tell you when he may be going live, when he predicts it may be maturing into a situation. And then he will stay on live as long as there are any warnings out there in the area.
And he tracks the entire United States. He's not just tracking Mississippi, Louisiana.
He's actually out of Kentucky. Yeah. But he covers the entire United States, and he seems to be pretty much spot on for what we see.
He has storm chasers out in the field, and he will constantly throughout the programming be getting in touch with them and show video that they're sending back to him. He is also connected with all of the, is it NOAA? And the Weather Channel. And when you see him, you'll see he's got all of these monitors all around him that he's watching it all. He's not just locked into one little thing that he's switching back and forth. He's got it all going all at once. And you may not use him, but there's a lot of these guys out there who are helping us. And just find one and make sure it's a good one, because you don't want to be let down. And
that's one, we've all been in places where we don't have television service when we're camping.
That's right.
So that's a good one to keep in mind if you're not using a live weather tracking station on YouTube, so to speak. We do really highly recommend Ryanhallyall.
Yes.
The phone. We were just talking about making sure you have your phone with you. We both, on the home screen of our phone, have what the current weather is in our area. It will also come up and let you know if there's any warnings that way. But this last storm, you were doing something a little bit different too.
I was. He had his going with the weather app on the phone, which we both have the same one. But what I would do is when they would start talking about a city or a county, or especially a city, if I'm looking into all of these things around me and I can't find how close that city is I'll go into my Google Maps and I'll put in the name of that town or the name of that city, and I will go down and look for direction, and it'll bring up exactly how many miles away it is and how far it would take for me to get there. And that way I have a better idea of where that town is so that I can continue tracking it then with all of the other tools that we're using. And then we do have another tool.
Which is kind of when all else fails. If television isn't working, if internet isn't working, if the table isn't working.
Sorry about that. This is it's not an old one, but this is the old-fashioned thing, the Rand McNally. This one's a little bit different, that we got this because it's for truckers, but it has counties on it. So if they start talking about, because sometimes they're talking in terms of counties, and sometimes they're talking in terms of cities. And when you travel the way we do, it's hard enough to keep track of the cities, but then to also keep track of all the different counties. So we can look on here, and in the maps themselves, they will not only have the towns on there, but in yellow it will say the name of each county that you're in, so that you really know where you're at.
And then one last thing that we were told when we went full-time on the road that we absolutely had to have was a NOAA weather radio. This one is a Midland. It's highly rated. It's really a nice radio. We have never used it. And the reason for that, when you pull this out of the box, there are, I believe, 5 different channels that NOAA broadcasts on. You have to figure out in your area which channel it's on. There is more setup and more time involved in this, that if it started to turn black and the wind started to blow and it started to rain, by the time I had this set up and programmed and ready to go, we could have been blown into the next county.
Yeah.
So the things that we're using, the local television, the internet, the phone, those are the things you can pick up and use right away. And that's why those have really become the basis for what we're doing, and not so much this. If you've got a weather radio that you've had success with, leave it in the comments below and let us know how it works for you and how much setup is involved in it when you travel from place to place. And on that same notion,
we're also interested in how you're dealing with it, especially when you're traveling, because we can certainly all learn from each other and help each other out. So we would like your comments in the down below of either things that we have missed or things that you feel you'd like to give an opposite opinion of. We welcome that.
Absolutely. If you have suggestions, if you have any concerns with what we've brought to you, please leave them in the comments. But we are giving you these items as things for you to think about. Jot them down as you watch the video and maybe incorporate them into your own plan. What will work for you, your rig, the amount of people traveling, pets or no pets. All those things are variables. But if we can help one person out there stay safe in a storm, the video has been well worth it.
That's right.
If you've enjoyed the video today, leave us a thumbs up. We sure appreciate it. If you haven't already subscribed to our videos, please subscribe and ring the notification bell. That way you'll know when every one of our new videos come out.
And thank you for following us as we follow the moon.
Thanks for watching today.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel.
And be sure to ring the notification bell so you'll know when new videos come out.
Don't forget to follow us on social media too.